Hi, it's Cory, and today for this music theory for ukulele video, we're going to be learning about how to decode chords and actually look at the different pitches that we're playing and how those chords are being made. If you haven't checked out the first video in this series, I'll have it linked above. Make sure to check it out before you watch this one first. That is, unless you're already familiar with the individual pitches and how to make different pitches on the fretboard. Also, if you're at all interested in getting extra resources that go along with this video, you can check out my Patreon where I have worksheets and guided notes specific to this video and for the different live streams that correspond with these videos. So in the last video, we learned about the different individual pitches on the fretboard and how to understand the relationship between the open strings and then the frets, where it raises each of those different pitches of the open strings by a half step for every fret on the fretboard. We take this same concept when it comes to actually making chords. Now, if you're brand new to ukulele and you've never heard of the concept of a chord before, a chord is when you play two or more pitches at the exact same time, and this can either be on an instrument or it can be sung. If we look at the C major chord, which is probably the most common chord on the ukulele, we have this C major chord. You probably just think of the C major chord as, oh, that's the chord. But we use different pitches to actually create that C major chord. And what's really great and really cool about knowing what pitches are used to make the different chords are, it provides a lot of utility when you move from a ukulele to something like a piano or a guitar. It allows you the ability to be able to figure out what chords are without having to know it ahead of time. It gives you a lot more independence in your playing and your musicianship. The way we would find out what the different pitches are in this chord is you just look at the pitches that you're using to actually make the chord. For instance, for this particular chord, we have one finger on the fretboard changing one string, and that's changing this first string. So we know that we still have a G, a C, and an E. We just have to figure out what the new pitch is for this A string. My finger's on the third fret. We know we have to raise the A string by 3 half steps. So let's just do that. I start with my A. The first fret is going to change that A to an A sharp or B flat. Then the next pitch up from there would just be B. And then the third fret, which is where our finger's at, or with the third finger, it would be the correct positioning, that changes it from a B to a C, creating this higher pitch. What's really interesting is you might be thinking to yourself, wait a second, there's already a C in the chord. It's this one, and it's a lower C. So can you hear that? The relationship between those two C's is what we call an octave. An octave is the distance between two notes that have the same name. However, it's a specific relationship when the distance in terms of frequencies happens to be doubled. So when we have our C here, the collection of pitches starting from our open string here, where we had G, C, E, A, turns to G, C, E, C, creating a C major chord. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why is it called a C major chord if there are other pitches going on? That's because the C in this case happens to be what we call the root of the chord. And that is the base of it in which we determine all the other pitches coming off of it. Chords typically, especially in ukulele, are mostly based in triads. And as you might imagine from the prefix tri, it means 3 pitches in a chord. It's not always going to be the case, but because we have 4 strings and mostly you don't omit strings in ukulele, you can pretty much always bet that it's going to be based on some kind of triad. Now, when I say the 4 different pitches, I am not talking about when you have the 4 different pitches. I'm saying the 4 different named pitches. In this case, a G, E, and a C. We're not really counting that extra high C as like a pitch because it's what we call doubled. It's a doubled pitch, even if it's an octave between. So it's really easy to figure out what the root of a chord is, especially in ukulele if you already know what the chord's name is, because the root is always going to be the chord. And you also might wonder, like, does the order of pitches in the chord matter? So like, you know, for instance, we have this collection of G, C, E, C. It doesn't really matter. When you spell them out, which actually does matter, the spelling of the word does matter. What you're gonna wanna do is start with the root, and then you're gonna go in the order of the musical alphabet. If you're not familiar with what the musical musical alphabet is, it is the first 7 letters of the regular English alphabet, and then just repeats over and over and over again. So for instance, it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So if you start with the C, the way you'd spell out the C chord, starting with C as the root, then you're going to want to look at what's the next chord in that order of the musical alphabet. In this case, it's going to be E, because we have C, then D, E, then F, G. And then we have our high C. C would be after that, and that's because it's the higher C, so it's going to take place in that next order of it. Another reason why it's really important to understand the different pitches that are going on in the chords you play is because frequently people will ask me, like if I'm doing a picking pattern, why it's important to maintain the progression if you're not playing a particular string, and this really feeds into that reasoning. And it is because if you accidentally pick a string that is not in the chord because you're not making all of the options of the pitches in the chord, it could sound really off. An example here is often if I'm doing this picking pattern of 3rd string to 1st string, which is pretty common, you notice I'm in an A minor position right now, but I'm not picking on that string. Well, what if I accidentally picked the G string here, or the 4th string, rather than my 3rd string? And if I wasn't in that A minor, this turns into this, which is a totally different chord and can really change the harmonic structure of your song. Whereas if I made a mistake and I'm playing here, all I'm doing is doubling the A, and it's still in the chord, so it makes sense. But in an A minor chord, we don't have a G in that chord. So that's why it's really important to maintain that progression and the finger positionings, and why it's really good to know the different pitches that are going into the chord. In the next video, we're gonna be talking about the specific chord qualities and what they look like and what that means. So for instance, like major, minor, augmented, diminished chords, stuff like that. We're gonna be talking about the reasoning why they're called that and the specific relationship between the different pitches in the chord that make it sound the way that they do. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.